why do we go to the bathroom? All the food you eat ends up in your stomach, where it's churned and turned into energy to help your body grow and function. But not every little bit of food you eat can actually be used by your body. All that extra leftover stuff makes its way through your guts, all the way to your butt, where, well, you know the rest. So, what actually is all that leftover stuff we poop out? Mostly a mixture of bacteria, proteins, fats, dead cells, and a whole lot of water. It might not seem like it, but poop is actually about 3/4 water. Going pee is a separate system inside the body. Instead of collecting waste from the food we eat, peeing is the way your body gets rid of waste from the bloodstream. You see, all the blood in your body goes through your kidneys, which is like a natural filter. Pee is all the waste and extra stuff that's left behind once the blood is clean. So, what is pee exactly? Well, it's mostly water, just like poop. It also has other bits of waste in it, like salts and blood pigments that give pee its yellowish color. Peeing is also an important way for your body to make sure it has the right amount of water. That's why you have to pee more often when you drink more. In fact, looking at your pee gives you an idea just how hydrated you are. You're doing good if your pee is somewhat between clearish and a pale yellow. And if it's darker yellow, well, it might be time to get yourself a glass of water. Okay, so that all makes sense, but why do we poop and pee? Why separate exits? Well, the answer to that comes down to a donut. You see, our body is actually a little bit like a donut, with our mouth, throat, stomach, and guts serving as the donut hole. Think about it. The food we eat never really goes inside of us. It travels through our body and comes out the other end, kinda like the world's grossest tunnel, with a mouth at one end and a butt at the other. So food passes through the donut hole, and all the leftover waste comes out the other side as poop. Pee, on the other hand, lets out the waste inside the donut itself. So it might be a bit gross, but now you know what's actually going on whenever you've gotta go. Now, anyone else hungry for donuts? What are boogers? All of your boogers start out deep in your nose as an icky, slimy substance known as mucus. It's made up mostly of water with bits of protein, salt, and other chemicals to keep it nice and sticky. Mucus isn't just inside your nose either. It can be found all over the inside of your body, from your nose to your lungs, stomach, and even down into your guts. In other words, we've got a lot of mucus in our body. That's kinda gross, but it's also important. That's because it plays a key role in protecting our insides from invaders that can make us sick. On average, your nose produces about 1 liter of snot each and every day. Most of it gets swallowed, but the rest moves down into your nostrils. Every time you breathe in, the air entering your nose is full of tiny particles that you don't want inside your lungs. Dust, dirt, germs, chemicals, and pollen, to name a few. So, the snot acts as the first line of defense and traps as much of the bad stuff as it can, keeping your lungs and airways clean and clear. Tiny hairs inside your nose, called cilia, help push it further down your nose. Then, air starts to dry it out a bit, and before long, the mucus morphs into a booger. Ta-da! All that bad bacteria and dirt is now trapped inside the drying booger, waiting for you to sneeze or blow your nose, finally removing the germs once and for all. This is why it's extra important to try and cover up whenever you sneeze in public. All that stuff spraying out of your face is pretty much pure germs. It's also why it's never a great idea to pick your nose, and an even worse idea to eat whatever you fish out of there. Your body is hard at work getting all that icky stuff out, so picking and eating is maybe not the best idea. So, what are boogers? An icky mix of water, salt, and proteins that keep our insides clean and healthy in the grossest way possible. Should you shower every day? No matter who you are, if you stopped bathing yourself altogether, eventually you'd get pretty dirty. Let's say you went a full year straight without taking a single bath or shower. How bad would things get? First off, you'd smell pretty bad. Why? Well, mostly from bacteria and dead skin. You see, dead skin rises to the surface and flakes off in little bits that come off as you wash your skin. When you don't wash, it starts to mix with the oils on your skin and clump together. After a year, the dead skin clumps that would normally be washed off with soap and water would fester as more and more grime builds up. You'd also likely break out in acne all over the place. All that buildup on your skin would cause your pores to clog up and form pimples. And the more grime, the worse the smell. One of the places that dead skin would build up the most is the top of your head. When flakes of skin come off our scalps, we call it dandruff. Dandruff makes your head itchy and dry. And after a year without washing your head, it would be super itchy and super dry. All that makes for an unsavory combination. But it's not all about how you look. All that bacteria means you're way more likely to get an infection or come down with an illness. Okay, so that's what happens when you don't wash up, but how often is enough? Do we really need to shower every single day? Well, truth is, there's no hard and fast rule on how often each and every person should wash up. But in general, experts suggest showering every 2 to 3 days if you can. Some people have jobs, hobbies, or lifestyles that leave them dirtier than the average person at the end of the day. If that's the case, showering more often is probably the best bet. It's also a good idea to try to not let things get really bad. Because if you did go a whole year without washing, it could take you a week or more to get yourself and your skin back to normal. So, do you need to shower every day? Turns out, you don't. As long as you find a regular routine that works for your way of life and keeps your body clean and healthy. After all, it's the only way to stop the stink. So wash up. Why do people go deaf? In order to understand why people can go deaf over time, you first need to know how your ears work. A human ear has 3 different areas: the outer, middle, and inner ear. The outer ear picks up sound waves from the air around it and moves them along your ear canal to the middle ear, where the sound waves vibrate the eardrum, sending the sound along to the inner ear. Next, the sound makes its way to the cochlea, which is a hollow, spiraled bit of bone that's full of fluid and lined with thousands of microscopic hairs. The hair cells take in the sound and make it louder, sending it to your brain so you can hear it. There are 3 basic types of hearing loss. The first is called conductive, which is any kind of problem with the outer or middle ear where sound can't make it to the inner ear. This type of hearing loss is usually temporary and will go away either with treatment or on its own. The second is called sensor and neural hearing loss, which is when there's a problem with the inner ear's connection to the brain and happens when the tiny little hairs in the inner ear are damaged. This kind of hearing damage is usually permanent. The third and final type is central hearing loss, which is caused by a problem in the brain. People with central hearing loss have perfectly functioning ears, but the brain isn't sending or receiving information from them. This is the most rare and also the hardest kind of hearing loss to treat. People treat these issues in lots of different ways. Some people just need to take medication to help their hearing return. Others have to use hearing aids or other devices instead. For those who can't hear even with a device, they might have an operation to put in something called a cochlear implant. It's a really small gadget that surgeons insert into the inner ear. The implant does the job the hairs are meant to do, turning sounds into electronic signals that are sent to the brain, allowing the damaged ear to hear again. So, why do people go deaf? Well, there's lots of different reasons it can happen. But it's important to remember that in today's world, there's all sorts of technology to help the hard of hearing live a perfectly normal life. And who knows what the future holds? How do muscles grow? Each person has more than 600 different muscles in their body that help you do just about everything. Carry things, walk, talk, hold your head up, and even pump blood and oxygen through your body. A muscle might look like one solid mass of meat, but it's actually made up of thousands and thousands of small rubber band-like fibers. There are 3 different types of muscles inside your body. Smooth muscles are thin, layered muscles you can't control, found in places like your throat, bladder, and eyes. Cardiac muscles control your heartbeat and are designed to help you pump blood through your heart, and like smooth muscles, they work all on their own. The kind of muscles you're probably picturing are called skeletal muscles. These are the ones that you control. Arms, legs, neck, anything that helps you move your bones around. So that's the different types of muscles, but how do they actually grow? To answer that, we'll have to take another look at the tiny fibers that together make up your muscles. Whenever you exercise, like going for a walk, lifting weights, or playing sports, those muscle fibers get stressed and damaged with little microscopic tears. That might sound like bad news, but that tearing is what helps your muscles grow big. Your body hops into action to repair the torn areas so they grow even bigger and stronger than before. When the body repairs each tear, it leaves the area slightly thicker and stronger than before. So the more of those little tears you get, the thicker and stronger your muscles grow. That's why getting exercise is so important. Your muscles won't just grow strong on their own. If you aren't willing to push them out of their comfort zone from time to time, they'll start to shrivel and weaken. That doesn't mean you need to become a bodybuilder to stay healthy, but simple activities like walking, biking, and playing games goes a long way to keeping your muscles healthy, no matter how old you are. Are you colorblind? About 4% of people worldwide are colorblind, and surprisingly, it affects boys more than girls. People with color blindness usually see plenty of colors. They just don't see quite the same colors as the rest of us. Why is that? Well, that has a lot to do with 2 types of special cells found only in your eyes. They're called rods and cones, and they help us detect light. Each eye has about 120 million rods inside the retina. Our rods can see in black, white, and shades of gray and tell us the shape of whatever we're looking at. Rods can't process any colors, but they're super sensitive to light, so we can see even when it's super dark. Cones, on the other hand, can sense color and need much more light to work well. That's why it gets harder to see different colors the darker it gets. Each eye has about 7 million cones. There are 3 types of cones in your eye, and each one is sensitive to a different color: red, green, or blue. Together, these cones can sense millions of different color combinations based on the mixture of light waves your cones are picking up. But for people with color blindness, you might be missing some of your red, green, or blue cones, which changes how you see colors. There are 3 main types of color blindness: red-green blindness, where it's hard to tell between red and green; blue-yellow blindness, where it's hard to pick out blue and yellow; and total color blindness, where you can't see any color at all. Red-green is the most common form of color blindness. There are 4 types of red-green blindness. Some see red as more green, or green as more red, or you might not be able to tell the difference between red and green at all. Blue-yellow is less common and has 2 types: Tritonomaly makes it hard to tell the difference between blue and green and yellow and red, and tritanopia means you can't see the difference between blue and green, purple and red, and yellow and pink. Complete and total colorblindness is by far the least common. Only about 0.003% of the world population. Okay, so that's all the different ways someone can be colorblind, but is there any treatment? Sadly, no. There's no way to cure colorblindness. There are things like filtered glasses or contacts that help you see colors closer to how a person without colorblindness might, but they're not perfect and don't really solve the problem. So if you ever see a friend, say, squeezing chocolate sauce onto a hot dog instead of ketchup, it's probably not a brand new viral foodie trend, just a really gross mistake. How long can you hold your breath? The average person can hold their breath anywhere from 30 seconds to a few minutes max. Of course, the world record is much more impressive than that. That's held by a man named Boogers, who managed to hold his breath in a pool for a whopping 24 minutes and 37 seconds in 2021. How'd he do it? Two big reasons. First, he inhaled pure oxygen for 30 minutes beforehand. And second, he practiced a lot. Practice helped him increase lung capacity so he could hold in more of that pure oxygen. The more oxygen in your body, the longer you can hold your breath. Sprinkle in some talent, and you have yourself a world record. Think of breathing a little bit like a thermostat in a house. When a chemical compound called carbon dioxide reaches a certain level in the bloodstream, your brain automatically triggers your breathing reflex. You breathe in new oxygen and breathe out some of the carbon dioxide, resetting your levels until the next breath a few seconds later. Oh, and it's no coincidence the world's elite breath holders all set their records underwater. Dunking your head below the surface actually triggers something called your diving reflex. Whenever we dive into the water, our heart rate's slow, and the blood vessels in our arms and legs narrow to conserve the oxygen stored inside your body. All that helps override our breathing instincts, so we can stay underwater longer before we need to come up for air. But of course, you have to be careful. After all, the reason your brain triggers you to breathe in the first place is because, well, you kinda need to keep breathing to live. When your body doesn't have enough oxygen coming into the lungs, it can cause all kinds of problems. All that carbon dioxide starts to build up with nowhere to go. The longer you hold your breath, the bigger the buildup, and the more likely you are to get lightheaded. Even longer and you could faint, or potentially even damage your brain or heart. We don't want to do that. So go ahead and hold your breath as long as you can. Just do it responsibly.